Most people believe cancer begins suddenly. One bad scan, one frightening phone call, one moment that changes everything. But what if I told you that long before cancer ever appears on a scan, your body is already fighting a silent war inside you every single day? And what researchers are now discovering is something that is completely changing how oncologists think about food, aging, inflammation, and the hidden environment where cancer cells either survive or struggle to grow. Because here is what most people over 50 never realize. Your body is not defenseless. In fact, you were born with an extraordinary internal protection system designed to detect abnormal cells, cut off dangerous blood supplies, repair damaged DNA, reduce inflammation, and even starve microscopic tumors before they ever become life-threatening. The problem is that after 50, many of these protective systems begin slowing down quietly in the background. Your metabolism changes, your immune response weakens, chronic inflammation rises, your gut microbiome shifts, blood sugar spikes become more damaging, and suddenly the foods you eat every single day begin sending signals to your body that either help cancer survive or make it much harder for dangerous cells to grow. And this is where things become fascinating, because some of the most powerful cancer-fighting compounds discovered by scientists are not hidden inside expensive medications or rare experimental treatments. They are sitting in ordinary kitchens, inside foods millions of people overlook every single day. Foods that researchers from places like Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and the National Cancer Institute have spent years studying because they appear to activate the body's natural defense systems in remarkable ways. Now, I want you to stay with me because the number one food on this list shocked even many cancer researchers when they began understanding what it may actually do inside aging cells. And if you are over 50, this conversation may matter more than you realize. You see, cancer does not simply grow because of bad luck alone. Scientists now understand that cancer thrives in certain biological environments. Environments filled with inflammation, poor blood vessel regulation, insulin resistance, oxidative stress, and weakened immune surveillance. Think of cancer cells like seeds. Seeds alone are not enough. They need the right soil, the right fuel, the right conditions. And what shocked researchers was discovering how dramatically food may influence that internal environment. I remember speaking with a patient named Robert, a 68-year-old retired teacher from Arizona, who told me something I will never forget. He said, "Doctor, I thought my diet only affected my weight. I never imagined it could affect whether dangerous cells survive inside my body." Robert had spent years eating what he believed was a harmless diet, processed meats almost daily, sugary snacks late at night, very little fiber, hardly any colorful vegetables, and after a routine screening revealed early-stage colon abnormalities, he became terrified. Not only because of the diagnosis itself, but because he suddenly realized his body had been sending warning signals for years. Fatigue, digestive issues, constant inflammation, weight gain around the abdomen, symptoms he thought were simply part of aging. But here is the hopeful part. When Robert began changing the biological environment inside his body through food, movement, sleep, stress reduction, and anti-inflammatory nutrition, something remarkable happened. His inflammatory markers improved, his blood sugar stabilized, his energy returned, his digestion changed, and his doctors noticed measurable improvements in several risk indicators over time. Now listen carefully, because this next part changes everything most people think they know about cancer prevention after 50. The goal is not perfection. The goal is not fear. The goal is not believing that one magical food can guarantee you will never face illness. That is not how biology works. But science increasingly suggests that certain foods may help create conditions where your body becomes more resilient, more protected, and more capable of defending itself naturally. And number 5 on our list may be one of the most underestimated foods in modern nutrition: cruciferous vegetables. Now, I know what some people are thinking already. Broccoli? Really? How could something so ordinary possibly matter in a conversation about cancer? But this is exactly why researchers became so fascinated, because cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, and bok choy contain natural compounds called glucosinolates. And when these vegetables are chopped or chewed, those compounds are transformed into biologically active substances like sulforaphane. What shocked scientists was observing how sulforaphane appeared to interact with genes involved in detoxification, inflammation reduction, and cellular defense mechanisms. In simple language, these compounds may help your body neutralize harmful substances before they damage cells. And this becomes critically important after age 50, because your body's ability to detoxify oxidative stress naturally declines with aging. Years of environmental toxins, processed foods, smoking exposure, alcohol, chronic stress, Poor sleep and inflammation accumulate slowly over decades. Your cells carry that burden. Researchers at Johns Hopkins became especially interested in broccoli sprouts because they contain extraordinarily high concentrations of sulforaphane compared to mature broccoli. Some laboratory studies found that sulforaphane may influence pathways involved in tumor suppression and cellular repair. And while no food should ever be viewed as a cure, the implications became impossible for scientists to ignore. But here is what most people never realize. The way you prepare these vegetables matters tremendously. Overcooking cruciferous vegetables can reduce the activity of the enzymes needed to produce sulforaphane effectively. That means lightly steaming broccoli may preserve more beneficial compounds than boiling it into softness. Tiny details like this can completely change how food behaves inside your body. And this is where many older adults unknowingly lose some of the protective power hidden inside these foods. I remember another patient, Margaret, 74 years old from Florida, who told me she avoided vegetables most of her life because she thought healthy eating meant bland food and endless dieting. She grew up during a generation where convenience foods became normal. Canned soups, frozen dinners, sugary cereals, processed meats. She told me, "Doctor, nobody taught us how food affects inflammation." After surviving breast cancer treatment, Margaret became deeply curious about how nutrition could support her long-term recovery. Slowly, she began adding cruciferous vegetables several times a week. Not perfectly, not obsessively, just consistently. She learned to roast Brussels sprouts with olive oil and garlic. She added cabbage to soups, broccoli to simple meals. And over time, she described feeling lighter, more energetic, less bloated, and more hopeful than she had in years. Now, was broccoli alone responsible for everything? Of course not, but that is not the point. The point is that food sends information to your body every single day. Every meal is either increasing inflammation or calming it. Every meal is either feeding metabolic dysfunction or supporting cellular health. Every meal is either strengthening your immune defenses or weakening them slowly over time. And once people begin understanding this, their relationship with food changes forever. Now stay with me because number 4 may surprise you even more. In fact, many people avoid this food because they have been told it contains too much fat. But researchers are now discovering that certain types of fat may actually help protect aging cells in powerful ways. I'm talking about extra virgin olive oil. For decades, populations consuming Mediterranean-style diets have shown lower rates of several chronic diseases, including certain cancers. Scientists wanted to understand why. Was it the fish, the vegetables, the lifestyle, the lower stress, the social eating habits? The answer appeared to be all of it together, but olive oil stood out repeatedly in the research. Extra virgin olive oil contains polyphenols and anti-inflammatory compounds that appear to help reduce oxidative stress and chronic inflammation inside blood vessels and tissues. Some studies suggest these compounds may even influence angiogenesis, the process through which tumors develop blood supplies. And this is where things become truly fascinating. Cancer cells are incredibly demanding. They need nutrients, oxygen, blood flow. Without an expanding blood supply, tumors struggle to grow beyond microscopic size. Dr. William Lee and other researchers have spent years studying angiogenesis because controlling blood vessel growth may play a major role in long-term disease prevention. Now think about how profound this idea really is. What if some foods are not merely healthy in the general sense, but actively help your body regulate the biological systems cancer depends on? That changes the entire conversation. A study associated with Mediterranean dietary patterns found that individuals consuming higher amounts of extra virgin olive oil alongside plant-rich diets often demonstrated lower inflammatory markers and improved metabolic health. And remember, inflammation is one of the major hidden drivers associated with aging and disease progression. But here is the critical part most people miss. Not all olive oils are equal. Many highly processed oils lose beneficial polyphenols during manufacturing. True extra virgin olive oil retains more of the natural compounds researchers are interested in studying. The quality matters, and so does consistency. Small daily habits practiced over years shape the internal environment of your body far more than occasional bursts of extreme dieting ever will. So let me ask you something. What if the biggest threat to healthy aging is not one dramatic event, but thousands of small, invisible choices repeated every single day? Because this is what researchers increasingly believe. And in just a moment, we are going to discuss the food category that stunned scientists with its apparent connection to gut health, immune strength, inflammation control, and even communication between your microbiome and your immune system. What researchers discovered there may completely change how you think about aging after 50. What shocked researchers was realizing that some of the most important cancer-fighting activity inside the human body may not begin in the bloodstream at all. It may begin deep inside the gut, in the trillions of microscopic organisms quietly living inside you right now. Organisms microorganisms that scientists once ignored almost completely, but now believe may influence inflammation, immunity, metabolism, hormone balance, and even how effectively your body identifies abnormal cells. And this is where number 3 on our list becomes impossible to ignore. Fiber-rich foods, not supplements, not artificial powders promising miracles. Real fiber from beans, lentils, oats, flax seeds, vegetables, berries, apples, nuts, and whole plant foods. Now I know fiber does not sound exciting. It certainly does not sound dramatic. But stay with me because what researchers discovered about fiber and cancer risk after 50 may be one of the most important nutritional revelations of the past 2 decades. You see, most people think fiber only helps digestion, but that is only the beginning of the story. When beneficial gut bacteria feed on certain types of fiber, they produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids, including butyrate. And butyrate became especially interesting to cancer researchers because of how it appears to interact with inflammation, immune regulation, and colon cell health. In simple terms, certain fibers may help create a gut environment that supports healthier cellular behavior. And this matters enormously because nearly 70% of the immune system is closely connected to the gut. Think about that for a moment. The condition of your digestive system may influence how effectively your body responds to dangerous cellular changes elsewhere. This changes everything most people thought they knew about aging. Researchers from institutions including Harvard and MD Anderson began noticing patterns repeatedly. Diets rich in diverse plant fibers were often associated with lower inflammation levels, healthier microbiome diversity, improved insulin sensitivity, and reduced risks for several chronic illnesses. Again, no single food guarantees protection, but the patterns became too consistent to dismiss. And here is the frightening part. Most adults over 50 are dangerously low in fiber without even realizing it. Processed foods dominate modern diets. White bread, sugary snacks, fast food, refined carbohydrates, convenience meals stripped of natural fiber. Over years, this may starve beneficial gut bacteria while encouraging inflammation-promoting microbial imbalances. And the body feels it. Bloating, fatigue, blood sugar instability, weight gain, digestive discomfort, brain fog, chronic inflammation. Symptoms many older adults accept as normal aging may actually reflect a deeply stressed internal environment. I remember a patient named Helen, 71 years old from Ohio, who came to me exhausted and discouraged after years of digestive problems. She had tried restrictive diets, expensive supplements, and countless medications. But what surprised her most was how dramatically her energy improved when she simply began rebuilding her diet around fiber-rich whole foods. She started slowly. Lentil soup twice a week, oatmeal with berries in the morning, more vegetables, more beans, more water, less processed sugar. Within months, she described feeling mentally clearer than she had in years. Her inflammation markers improved, her weight stabilized naturally without extreme dieting, and perhaps most importantly, her fear began fading. Because fear is one of the hidden emotional burdens many adults carry after 50. Every ache feels frightening. Every scan creates anxiety. Every news headline about cancer feels personal. But knowledge changes fear. Understanding that your body possesses natural defense systems, and that food may help support those systems, gives people something they desperately need again: hope. And this is where things become even more fascinating. Researchers are now studying how the microbiome may affect immunotherapy outcomes in cancer patients themselves. In some studies, patients with healthier and more diverse gut bacteria appeared to respond differently to certain treatments compared to those with disrupted microbiomes. Think about how extraordinary that is. The tiny organisms inside your digestive tract may influence how your immune system communicates throughout your entire body. Now, does this mean fiber is a miracle cure? Absolutely not. And I want to be very careful and honest about that. Cancer is complex. Genetics matter, environment matters, smoking matters, alcohol matters, sleep matters, physical activity matters. Screening and early detection matter tremendously. But what science increasingly suggests is that food may influence the terrain where health or disease develops over time. And once you understand that, you begin eating differently, not out of fear, but out of respect for your body. Now stay with me, because number 2 may be one of the most misunderstood foods in modern nutrition. In fact, millions of older adults avoid it because they worry about sugar. But researchers discovered that certain compounds inside these foods may possess remarkable anti-inflammatory and cellular protective properties. I'm talking about berries, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries. These small fruits contain powerful compounds called anthocyanins, along with polyphenols and antioxidants that researchers have intensely studied for their potential role in reducing oxidative stress and inflammation. And here is why this matters after 50. As we age, our cells experience increasing oxidative damage. Imagine tiny biological sparks damaging tissues gradually over decades. DNA damage accumulates. Repair systems weaken. Chronic inflammation quietly rises. This internal wear and tear creates an environment where abnormal cells may have a greater opportunity to survive. But antioxidant-rich foods may help neutralize some of that oxidative stress. And what fascinated researchers was how berries appeared to influence multiple systems simultaneously: inflammation, blood sugar regulation, blood vessel function, brain health, immune signaling. Some laboratory studies even explored how berry compounds interacted with pathways involved in tumor growth and cellular communication. Again, no food alone prevents cancer, but the biological effects researchers observed became deeply compelling. I remember meeting Samuel, a 66-year-old grandfather from Georgia, who had survived prostate cancer treatment several years earlier. He told me the experience changed the way he viewed aging completely. Before his diagnosis, he believed getting older meant inevitable decline. Less energy, more illness, more medications, less control. But during recovery, he began learning about anti-inflammatory nutrition. He swapped sugary desserts for berries and Greek yogurt at night, started walking daily with his wife, reduced processed foods, prioritized sleep. And one day he told me something incredibly emotional. He said, "Doctor, for the first time in years, I feel like I'm working with my body instead of against it." That sentence stayed with me because so many people feel disconnected from their own health after 50. They feel betrayed by their bodies. They feel powerless watching friends become sick. They feel overwhelmed by contradictory health advice everywhere. But what if healthy aging is not about chasing perfection? What if it is about creating small daily conditions that help your body function the way it was designed to? Now, here is something else researchers found especially important about berries. They may help support healthier blood sugar responses compared to many processed sweets. And this matters because elevated insulin and chronically high blood sugar levels are increasingly associated with inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. Cancer cells are metabolically demanding. They consume enormous amounts of energy. Scientists continue studying the complex relationship between insulin signaling, obesity, inflammation, and cancer biology because these systems appear deeply interconnected. And this is exactly why many oncologists now talk about food differently than they did 20 years ago. Not as simple calories, not merely as weight control, but as biological information. Every bite sends signals. Signals that affect hormones, signals that affect inflammation, signals that affect immune activity, signals that affect cellular repair. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time anyone explained food to you this way? Not as guilt, not as restriction, but as communication with your body itself. Because once people understand this, healthy eating stops feeling like punishment. It begins feeling like protection. And in just a moment, we are going to reveal the #1 food that researchers, oncologists, and longevity experts continue discussing because of its extraordinary connection to angiogenesis, inflammation control, immune support, and cellular defense. This food contains compounds so biologically active that scientists have spent years studying how they may influence the very pathways cancer cells depend upon to survive. And honestly, what researchers discovered stunned even many experts in the field. Now, what we are about to explore is where modern nutrition science becomes truly fascinating, because for decades, researchers believed that food could only influence the body in indirect ways, through calories, vitamins, minerals, and basic metabolism. But what they are now discovering is far more profound. Certain foods appear to interact with the body at a signaling level, influencing inflammation, blood vessel growth, immune activity, and even how cells communicate under stress. And when we bring everything together from the previous foods we discussed, there is one category that repeatedly stands out in oncology and longevity research, not as a cure, not as a promise, but as a powerful biological support system for aging health. And this brings us to #1, tomatoes. Yes, something as simple as tomatoes has become one of the most studied foods in relation to prostate health, cardiovascular function, inflammation control, and cellular protection pathways. And what shocked researchers was not just the tomato itself, but one specific compound inside it called lycopene. Now stay with me because this is where the science becomes incredibly interesting. Lycopene is a natural pigment that gives tomatoes their deep red color, but inside the human body, it behaves in a completely different way. It acts as a powerful antioxidant that appears to help reduce oxidative stress, the same type of stress that damages cells over decades and contributes to aging-related disease development. And unlike some nutrients that the body struggles to absorb, lycopene actually becomes more bioavailable when tomatoes are cooked, especially when combined with healthy fats like olive oil. That means something as simple as tomato sauce cooked slowly with olive oil may actually deliver more usable lycopene than raw tomatoes alone. And this is where traditional diets suddenly make much more scientific sense than people once realized. Researchers from institutions like Harvard and the National Cancer Institute have spent years observing dietary patterns and noticing something consistent. Populations with higher tomato intake, particularly in cooked forms like sauces and soups, often show different long-term health trends, especially in relation to prostate health in men over 50. Again, this does not mean prevention or cure, but the biological association was strong enough to keep scientists deeply interested. What makes this even more powerful is how lycopene appears to interact with oxidative stress at the cellular level. Think of oxidative stress like rust forming inside the body over time. Every exposure to pollution, processed foods, chronic stress, poor sleep, and inflammation contributes to that internal wear. Lycopene-rich foods may help neutralize some of those damaging molecules before they can accumulate, and this is where aging changes the conversation completely, because after 50, the body's natural antioxidant defenses begin to weaken. Enzymes that once efficiently neutralized oxidative stress become less active. Repair systems slow down, and suddenly the body relies more heavily on external sources of protective compounds found in food. I remember a patient named George, a 72-year-old retired engineer from California, who once told me something very honest. He said, "I spent my whole life fixing machines. I never thought about fixing the environment inside my own body." George had developed early concerns around inflammation and metabolic imbalance, and like many older adults, he assumed it was simply part of aging. But when he began learning about dietary patterns and incorporating more tomato-based foods into his weekly routine, something interesting happened. Not overnight, not dramatically, but gradually, his digestion improved, his energy became more stable, his inflammation markers shifted in a better direction over time. And what mattered most to him was not just the physical changes, but the sense of control he felt returning. Because control is something many people over 50 quietly lose without realizing it. They feel like their body is something happening to them rather than something they can actively support. But science is increasingly suggesting otherwise. And now we reach something even more important than any single food. Because when researchers step back and look at the entire picture of cancer risk, inflammation, aging, and cellular health, they notice something critical. It is not about one superfood. It is about patterns. It is about consistency. It is about building an internal environment where the body is less inflamed, more stable, more nourished, and more capable of repairing itself. And this is where Dr. William Li and other researchers have changed the conversation entirely. Instead of asking, what kills cancer? The more modern question becomes, what supports the body's natural defense systems so abnormal cells are less likely to survive in the first place? And this shift in thinking is powerful because it moves people away from fear and toward action. Now, I want to be very clear with you, nothing in this video is a guarantee. Nothing replaces medical care, nothing replaces screenings, diagnosis, or treatment. But what we are talking about is something equally important: support, the kind of daily support that accumulates over years. Now, let's talk about how all of this connects together, because if you step back and look at cruciferous vegetables, fiber-rich foods, berries, olive oil, and tomatoes, a pattern begins to emerge. These foods all share one common theme. They are rich in compounds that influence inflammation, oxidative stress, gut health, blood vessel regulation, and cellular communication. In other words, they don't just nourish you, they communicate with your biology. And this is where aging becomes less about decline and more about adaptation. I want you to think about something for a moment. Two people can be the same age, both 65, both living in the same city, both facing similar genetic backgrounds. But inside their bodies, the biological environment can be completely different depending on long-term lifestyle choices. One body is inflamed, stressed, nutrient poor, insulin resistant, and biologically overwhelmed. The other is supported, nourished, stable, oxygen rich, and metabolically balanced. Same age, different internal world, and this is the part that researchers find most hopeful, because it means aging is not purely fixed. It is influenced, it is shaped, it is supported or disrupted by daily life. And I want you to remember this deeply. Small choices are not small when repeated over time. Now, before we move into the final and most important part of this journey, I want you to reflect on something with me. What if the goal is not to fear cancer every day, but to understand how your body naturally defends itself and how you can gently support that system through simple, consistent habits? Because that shift alone changes everything. In the final block, we are going to bring all of this together into a clear understanding of how food, inflammation, blood vessels, immunity, and cellular health connect into one powerful system, and what you can begin doing in a realistic, simple way starting today. And I will also share the most important mindset shift that doctors wish more patients understood after 50.